Okay, Rabotai. Erev Tov, good evening. It's a great honor to be here. Anytime I have an opportunity to speak to Jews, it's kavod gadol. It's a great honor. The Shiur is a refuah shalema to Gabriela Bat Sarah and Asher Ben Alice. It's also the Ili Nishmat Esther Shabbat Bat Latisa. Hashem Moshe Gruenstein. So I understand I'm speaking here to young professionals, singles. They tell a story about this fellow who was an older single, so got this like obsession. Couldn't help himself. He kept thinking, I want to live forever, I want to live forever. He was consumed by it. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. So he has to speak to his rabbi. He says, Rabbi, I can't take it anymore. I'm going out of my mind. I have this obsession that I want to live forever and I can't do anything, I can't function. He said, Chaim, I told you already, you have to get married. He says, you mean if I get married, I'll live forever? He says, no, but those feelings will pass. I don't want to discourage you, don't worry, it's good, all that. So my friends, I was invited to speak, but we're in the 3 weeks now. This is a time of mourning for the Jewish people. You don't shave, take haircuts, we listen to music. No weddings take place. Soon it's Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, the most tragic day on the Jewish calendar. So we're mourning for the destruction of the temple. But it happened a long time ago, over 2,000 years ago. Get over it. Why are we still mourning? I'm sure there are many reasons for that. I want to share with you my own little reason. The Gemara tells us, and by the way, only in the Gemara the rabbis can ask such questions. Today we have questions also. Why does God do this and why does God do that? But we're not big enough to give answers. But once upon a time in the era of the Talmud, the rabbis were so great and so connected to God Almighty that they knew the answers. And the Talmud in the Gemara Yuma, page 9b, when it discusses the destruction of the second temple, it says, how could it happen? What happened? Why? Says the Gemara, I don't understand. It was a generation where people learned Torah. It was a generation where people did mitzvot. It was a generation where people did even acts of kindness. So how in the world could such a destruction take place? Says the Gemara, and many of you know it. The Gemara says, why was the second Beis HaMikdash destroyed? Because of sinat chinam. What does that mean? Hatred. Yeah, but hatred what? Hatred for no reason. I want to ask you a question. What does that mean, hatred for no reason? There's always a reason why you don't like somebody. What do you mean, hatred for no reason? So to give you an example, what we're talking about, so there's this teacher in a classroom, and this kid keeps on talking. And the teacher tells him, quiet, you're disturbing the class, stop talking. But he keeps on talking, and talking, and talking, and he's not stopping. So the teacher takes out a knife, and he cuts off his finger. The kid is screaming, he says, what are you doing out of your mind? They call the police, the parents come in. You go ahead and you cut off a kid's finger for no reason? He says, wait a second. What do you mean no reason? He was talking. He was disturbing the class. I told him 1,000 times to stop talking. He didn't talk. It wasn't for no reason. He says, you're out of your mind. But that's not a reason to cut off somebody's finger. Sinat Chinam means, of course there's a reason why I don't like you. You offended me. You didn't invite me to the wedding. There's a reason. But that's Sinat Chinam. That's not enough of a reason to dislike another Jew. You have to understand that the greatest protection that the Jewish people have is Achdut. Is being together. You have no idea. It's the greatest iron dome that there is. It's our greatest protection. And the Talmud says that that's the reason why the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. You can keep Shabbat, you can learn Torah, you can do everything you want. You can do every mitzvah in the book. But says the rabbis in the Talmud that if there's Sinat Chinam, forget about it. Mashiach ain't coming. There's a famous rabbi in the land of Israel. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. Very famous posek. He decides Jewish law. Great rabbi, tzaddik, Talmid Chacham, a great scholar. He gets questions from all over the world. So you want to listen to another question here about Sinat Chinam? A man writes a letter to him. He says, my brother passed away. And my question is, do I have to sit Shiva? Do I have to sit 7 days of mourning? What kind of ridiculous question is that? Of course you have to do 7 days of mourning. Well, listen to the letter. He writes this in his Sefer, in his book. He writes, this is what a Jew asked him. I'm asking this question because if I do have to sit Shiva, I am going to be filled with such simcha, I'm going to be filled with such happiness over the fact that my brother died. Because when our father passed away, there was an inheritance issue. He made my life miserable. And I'm so happy that he's gone, so what's the purpose of me to sit Shiva if I'm going to be filled with joy? You have a question from a Jew? Oh, you have a reason to dislike your brother, no question about it. But that's Sinat Chinam, and that's not a reason for that type of hatred. So you say, Rabbi, no. You're mixing apples with oranges. Your first case of the teacher cutting off the finger, all right, that's ridiculous. Of course, that's hatred. But here we're talking about money. The God of the world. Isn't that a good enough reason? No, it's not a good enough reason to sell your soul. It's not a good enough reason not to talk to your brother. It's not a good enough reason to hate your brother. No, it's not. It's Sinat Chinam. It's hatred for no reason. And as long as we're afflicted with this, the Galut, unfortunately, is going to be a little longer. And that's the message I really want to bring out to you, is how all of us, each on our own level, you can't change overnight. But each on our own level, listen, I was a rabbi for many years. I've seen a lot. There's machloket, there's disagreements and arguments in families. Brothers don't talk to sisters and parents don't talk to kids. And there's fighting and there's bickering and there's quarreling. Ad ein sof, to no end. So you have to start somewhere. You know, one of the great rabbis says that one of the main reasons that a Jew is put into this world, a person, why are we created? One of the main reasons we're put into this earth is to help another Jew. That's what we're here for. Sometimes it's interesting. We can help so many other people, except for sometimes the people in our own family. I could be nice to this one, I could be nice to that one, I can get along with this one. But in my mishpacha, the people I'm supposed to love the most, it's not so pashut, it's not so simple. You know, I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent many times over, Baruch Hashem. You want to know the greatest joy of a parent, and you want to know the greatest pain that a parent can ever go through? The greatest joy is to see your children get along, that they love each other. And the greatest pain for a parent is when they see their children fighting and bickering, and one doesn't talk to the other. It's 1,000 daggers in their heart. You should know that Borei Olam, Almighty God, is the same way. We're all His children. And that which causes Him more pain than anything else. Yes, more pain than not keeping Shabbat, more pain than not learning Torah, more pain than not keeping the mitzvot. What causes Him the most pain in the universe is the fact my children, they're not getting along. You know how bad machlokas is? I just want to give you an idea from the Torah portion. We read it a few weeks ago. This is the Torah portion called Korach. Korach. He rebelled against Moses, against Moshe Rabbeinu. Now you should know something. Moses was always a defender of the Jewish people, no matter what they did, whether it was the golden calf, whether it was the sin of the spies, no matter what they did, he always pleaded on their behalf. He always begged for mercy for the Jewish people, all the time. But this one time, when there was this tremendous machlokas, there was this tremendous argument, rebellion, if you will. Here Moshe Rabbeinu stands up and says that if all of you are something totally out of character for Moses, if all of you die this very minute, then it means that I'm not sent by God, and that means you're right, because they claim that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moses was making up stuff on his own. It wasn't really from God. So he says, if you all die right now, then you're right, and it doesn't mean anything. But if you die, then the earth opens up and swallows you alive, then it shows that I'm right. And that's exactly what happened. So the pasuk, the verse says, now listen carefully to this. Korach and his cohorts, Datan v'Aviram, they stood out the tent. V'Dasan v'Aviram yotzu nitzavim pesach oholeim. They all stood out their tents. U'neshayim, their wives. U'b'neiim, their children. V'tapam. Tapam here means the little babies. And Rashi is the great biblical commentator. And Rashi wants to know, why? What's going on here? You're telling me that everybody died here? Even the babies were swallowed up by the earth? What did the babies do wrong? Says Rashi, we know that in a bet din on earth, a person can't be punished till a woman the age of 12, a man the age of 13. Heaven doesn't give consequences till the age of 20. They understand teenagers. Right? So till 20, they don't give any consequences. And you're telling me here little babies get swallowed up by the earth? It makes no sense. How could something like that be? So Rashi says, you see from here that machlokas is really, really bad. But let me give you the reason. Didn't answer the question. So okay, I see it's really bad. But why should they suffer? So I'm going to read to you from the commentators. Okay? You'll forgive me. I'm going to translate it in Hebrew. Oh, in English. I'm going to read it in Hebrew. Ki ein chet hamachloket kishar chatoyim. The sin of machlokas is not like other sins. In Tomar, if you ask the question, why is this different than other sins? Ki ach hakoton nenash, that even a little baby, a little child is punished. How could that be? You should know the following rule. Slightly Kabbalistic, maybe a little above my pay grade. but I will read it to you anyway. And I've seen this in my lifetime. כי המחלוקת והגהנום נבראו בפעם אחת ביום שני. Machloket and Gehenom, that's the word we're never allowed to say. The purgatory, hell, we're not supposed to mention that word. Right? They were both created the same day. What does that mean? Machlokas, arguments, divisiveness was created on Monday, on the second day of creation. What it means is, in creation, the waters were separated. Part of the waters, whatever this means, went upstairs to heaven. The other part of the waters came down here, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, lakes, etc., stayed over here. So that's called a division. It's not a real argument. But there was some machloket, there was some division. And being that they're inexorably intertwined, Gehenna and machloket are intertwined, therefore, listen very carefully, when there's a machloket, when there's an argument, when Jews are fighting, you create the Gehenna, you create a fire. You can't see it with the naked eye, but it's there. And anybody in that vicinity is swallowed up by that fire. And therefore, when there is anybody in that vicinity gets burnt. How many times does this happen in Machloket where children suffer, babies suffer, everyone suffers. They didn't do anything wrong. But you create a Gehenna. Okay, so what are we supposed to do? How do you develop positive feelings? Or at least not negative feelings when people hurt you? How do you do that? This person hurt me. They weren't that nice to me. You know, there's a famous Kabbalist in Israel by the name of Gamaliel Rabinovich. And he said, unfortunately, we know in times of tragedy, as we had Simchat Torah in October, terrible, terrible tragedy, there was tremendous achdut. All different types of Jews got together. Religious, not religious, yesh kippah, there is a kippah, no kippah. Made no difference, no one cared. Everybody was together. Says Rabbi Rabinovich, that's very nice, but that's not a trick. When ballistic missiles are falling, it's not hard to have achdut. But achdut, when the belly is full and when life is good, and there are no real problems, and you're making money, but this person's like this, they're different, and this person's different, and this person is different, they don't think like me, they don't act like me. That's the trick. That's the trick. So how do you do it? I mean, this is all oversimplified because we're not going to go too much longer, but at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and all human beings are fallible. All human beings make mistakes. All human beings think differently. No two people think alike. The sages say, Kishem sha'in patzufei and shavin, just the way two people, their faces don't look alike, so too Kain ein deotehen shavin. The personalities, the way they think is not alike. People think differently. They have a different way of looking at life than you do. Not everybody is as astute and brilliant and so smart and intuitive like you are. Other people have a different way of looking at things. For them, they're not so sensitive. Now, they should have been sensitive to me. You should have realized, okay, but what do you want from me? I don't. I'm not in your head. I'm not in your head. I'm a human. Yes, I make mistakes. It's true. We all make mistakes. So why can't you, there's a Yiddish word for it, fargin? Why can't you let it go? Why can't you see that this person was not malicious? Most people are not evil. Some, but most people are not evil. They're not out to destroy you. Mistakes happened, but what happens is it snowballs. You made a mistake, I was offended, I say something back to you, you say something back to me, and then it gets into a mushroom of explosive relationship, and then we wind up saying terrible things to each other. It all started from a misunderstanding. Yes, maybe I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. Yes, I was angry. Yes, I lost my cool. Obviously, there are many exceptions. This is just a general idea. To understand, there's a mitzvah in the Torah. I call it a dead mitzvah. Nobody observes it. You know what it is? It's called Dan Lakav Suchut. Try to judge people favorably. It happens to be a positive commandment in the Torah. But it's not so easy to judge people favorably. But you have to realize that many times in life there are circumstances that you don't know. They always say there's 2 sides to a story. It's not true. There are 5 sides to a story. There are 6 sides to a story. You don't know everything. You don't know what this person was going through on that day. You don't know. Yeah, you think, you so. But a great psychologist, masters of psychology when it comes to somebody else. I'll give you a little example of what I'm talking about. Listen to this. Anybody heard Nelson Mandela? Yeah, he was the first democratically elected president of South Africa. Now, usually when you go to Jews, you tell them Nelson Mandela. So, Nelson Mandela, he didn't like the Jewish people. He didn't like Israel. He was close with Yasser Arafat, Yamach Shlomo, right? He was close to Yasser Arafat. So, people say he was a Jew hater. Really? Well, if you speak to South Africans, they'll tell you that he was a hero. In fact, when he died, when Nelson Mandela died, almost every Orthodox rabbi in South Africa, they don't have conservative reform sitting there. It's all Orthodox. They all gave eulogies for Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela happened to have had a very close relationship with the Jewish people. Nelson Mandela got his first position as a lawyer in a Jewish law firm in South Africa. They were the only ones that would hire him. In his trial, his lawyers, all of them, almost all of them, were Jewish. One of the key leaders in his party, Helen Sussman, was Jewish. So when you ask a South African, they have a different attitude. Now, why was he against Israel? Well, because Israel, the truth is, supported South Africa. And Arafat, Yamach Shlomo, and the Palestinians supported him during his struggles. They were on his side. For whatever political reason, it made no difference. So, it's understandable that that's how he felt, but his feelings towards the Jewish people were unbelievable. Listen to this. This is just absolutely unbelievable. When he became elected as the first democratically elected president of South Africa, you're not going to believe this. You could learn from this. Yes, you could learn from a non-Jew. He went ahead and he made the first state kosher dinner, now listen to this carefully, in honor of who? In honor of Dr. Percy Yutar. Percy Yutar was the Attorney General in South Africa. He happened to have been, this is one Jew I guess he didn't get along with, he was an Orthodox Jew. He was the Attorney General of South Africa, and he advocated for Nelson Mandela to get the death sentence. He wound up getting a life sentence, and he was in prison for 27 years. But he advocated for the death penalty. He made a state kosher dinner in honor of Dr. Percy Yutar and his family. The first kosher dinner for him, for the guy who wanted you dead. Yes, because now it's a time to put everything behind us. We're starting a new country, and there's reconciliation. You hear this? So you could look at Nelson Mandela. Yeah, he hates Israel. Okay, he hates Jews. Life is a lot more complex than that. But now for a Jewish example. So I don't know if you remember. No, you probably wouldn't have, a lot of you weren't around then. 1984. Ronald Reagan wanted to put a teacher in space. It was called. What was it called? Teacher in Space Project. That's what it was called. 11,000 teachers tried to apply to be that teacher that's going to go up in the shuttle into space. Right? There's going to be a 7-member crew, and the teacher's going to be one of them. In Baltimore, there was a Mrs. Kornbluth, an Orthodox Jewish woman. She was a teacher in a yeshiva boys' school. She taught secular studies. And she applied. It made big waves in the Jewish world, certainly in the Orthodox Jewish world. She applied for the position. But she didn't get it. Who got it? Krista McAuliffe. She was the one that was chosen. And in January 28th, 1986, 73 seconds after that flight took off, 48,000 feet in the air, was a horrific, horrific accident. And the shuttle exploded, killing all 7 people instantaneously. The next day, when Mrs. Kornbluth came to school, so she was quite shaken. I mean, of course, she thanked God that they never chose her, but at the same time, it was such a terrible tragedy. She felt connected a little bit to that teacher. She was in a let's put it this way, she was not in a good place. All of a sudden, a little kid comes running over from her class, one of these rambunctious ones, and said, Mrs. Kornbluth, I have to tell you something. Now, Mrs. Kornbluth. Okay, what is it? Mrs. Kornbluth, I'm so sorry that you were not on that shuttle spaceship. So she's listening to this kid. She's already in a bad place. She just heard chutzpah beyond chutzpah on steroids. I'm sorry that was, but she held herself back with Herculean strength, and she said, why do you say that? He says, because Mrs. Kornbluth, you're such a good person that if you would have been on that shuttle, God never would have allowed it to explode. And then he ran away to recess. Can you imagine if she would have exploded at this little kid? He just wanted to say something sweet and kind. But we jump to conclusions. He's a brat. He's a chutzpahniak. How can you do that? And I'll end with my last story. This I happen to know is 100% true because I know the rabbi who it happened to. It wasn't me. This person had one of the people in his congregation, his father passed away. And he told the rabbi that, he travels a lot, business, whatever. I'll give a donation to the shul, and you'll say Kaddish, for my father. The rabbi, unfortunately, was used to this, that people, for your own father, sometimes people just don't have the time, whatever, it's a burden. Okay, he says, yes, we'll take care of it, don't worry. 2 weeks later, the man comes back, and the rabbi sees he's coming into shul, he's praying 3 times a day, he's saying Kaddish. So after the praise, he asked him to say, what happened? You changed your mind? He says, I'll tell you what happened. I had no relationship with my father. My father was a Holocaust survivor. I know that mentality. And I remember when I was a kid, it was a difficult relationship. I didn't really see the love. One time we were in our class, I don't know, 7 years old, 8 years old, they were building paper airplanes, whatever. And I put on the paper airplane. I put on, to my dad, number 1, something like that. And I was so proud of it. And I came home and I gave it to my father. And my father looked at it, said, that's nice, son. And he just put it down. And that was it. I think that was the breaking moment. From then on, I was dead with my father. I had no relationship. The reason I didn't say Kaddish is because I didn't want to say Kaddish. I got the mic. But then I went into his office and I opened up the drawer. And in that drawer was that paper airplane. It was already yellow and crumbly from years and years and years and years ago. And I'm looking at that paper airplane. And the secretary happens to walk in just when I'm opening that drawer, looking at that airplane. And she says, your father used to take this out all the time to look at it. What that that means is, yes, he was a Holocaust survivor. It was hard for him to communicate. It was hard for him to show his feelings. So Chaval, unfortunately, a whole life went by without a relationship because you couldn't understand. You couldn't put yourself into somebody's body, into somebody's mind to see. As he got older, obviously at 8 you can't do it, but as you get older, don't you understand what people go through? Don't you understand how it affects them? Can't you see a different perspective? But we judge. And we lose the most beautiful relationships in the world because of it. Is it easy to let go? No, it's not easy to let go. It's hard, it takes work. But you have no idea in heaven when a person tries to make peace, you have no idea what goes on upstairs. You have no idea the party that they make. You have no idea the standing ovation that you get. But I talk to myself too. This is what we have to work on, especially now during the 3 weeks. Now is coming the more serious part of the morning, the 9 days. Starts Shabbat. Shabbat we don't show morning. Then Tisha B'Av, next, let's say Shabbat, Saturday night, is to work on ourselves. Whatever we can do to just mend a little bit of the relationship. To start to talk to somebody we haven't spoken to. Maybe to call up the phone to my brother, to my sister who I haven't said hello for in 5, 6, 10 years because of something that happened. Or probably nobody even knows or remembers anymore what happened. I end with a beautiful line I once saw. We can't go back to and create a new beginning. But each and every one of us can start today to create a new ending. Thank you so much for listening.